going back to the village with your head held high. It's 3 S's.
The night Susan Boyle walked onto the stage of Britain's Got Talent, the world thought it was about to witness a joke. Laughter filled the room before she even spoke. Judges smirked, cameras mocked her appearance, and millions silently decided she didn't belong. What no one saw was the lifetime of loneliness behind her smile. Decades of being ignored, underestimated, and alone. And when she finally sang, the laughter didn't fade. It shattered into shock and tears. But what if that miracle moment came at a devastating cost? America's Got Talent's Susan Boyle finally confirms what we all suspected, that behind the inspiring fairy tale was manipulation, heartbreak, and a woman who paid for fame with her peace. This isn't just a story about talent. It's a story about what the world took from her. Long before global fame, Susan Boyle lived a quiet, almost invisible life in the small Scottish village of Blackburn. She spent her days in the same modest council house where she had grown up, surrounded by memories rather than people. Her life revolved around routine, faith, and caring for her aging mother. She had never been kissed, never been in a romantic relationship, never known the kind of companionship most people take for granted. When her mother passed away in 2007, Susan Boyle was left completely alone. The house that once felt safe became unbearably quiet. Her only constant companion was her cat, Pebbles. Grief hollowed her out, but it also left her with one final promise, a promise she had made to her mother before she died. She told her she would try. She would finally chase the dream she had carried her entire life. That promise would lead her to a decision that changed everything. On April 11, 2009, Susan Boyle stepped onto the stage of Britain's Got Talent, believing she was simply honoring her mother's memory. She had no idea that her audition would become one of the most watched moments in internet history. The judges, Simon Cowell, Piers Morgan, and Amanda Holden, barely concealed their skepticism. The audience giggled openly. In their minds, she was already the punchline. Then she sang I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables, and within seconds, the atmosphere transformed completely. Gasps replaced laughter. Eyes widened. People cried. By the time she finished, the entire room was on its feet. That performance exploded online. Uploaded to YouTube, it spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Within months, it reached over 100 million views, making Susan Boyle a global phenomenon overnight. News outlets around the world framed her as the ultimate underdog, the ordinary woman who shocked everyone with extraordinary talent. It felt like a fairy tale, and the world desperately wanted to believe it. But behind the scenes, the truth was already far more complicated and far darker. What audiences didn't know was that Susan Boyle had auditioned for television before. Producers were aware of her voice long before she walked onto that stage. Her appearance wasn't accidental, and her awkwardness wasn't unexpected. The contrast between how she looked and how she sounded was deliberately emphasized to create maximum shock. The moment wasn't fake. Her talent was real, but the narrative was carefully constructed. The entertainment machine understood that transformation sells, and Susan Boyle became its perfect product. Fame came crashing into her life without warning. One day she was alone in Blackburn, and the next she was being flown across countries, surrounded by cameras, microphones, and strangers shouting her name. Interviews blurred together. Schedules became relentless. People noticed something unsettling in her early appearances. Susan Boyle often seemed confused, disoriented, and frightened. She struggled to follow simple questions and sometimes lost track of her own thoughts mid-sentence. There were moments when her eyes revealed sheer panic, but the world mistook it for nerves. During the competition, an incident at a hotel raised serious concerns among staff. Susan Boyle reportedly suffered a mental episode that required intervention, but the details were quickly suppressed. Production crews whispered about her fragile state, yet no one spoke publicly. Too much money was at stake. The fairy tale couldn't be interrupted by the truth. When Britain's Got Talent reached its finale and Susan Boyle placed second to diversity, she smiled on stage, but the exhaustion was unmistakable. The dream that had kept her going was suddenly gone, and what remained was a woman completely drained. Just days later, Susan Boyle was admitted to the Priory Clinic in London. The official explanation was exhaustion, but those who witnessed her condition described something far more serious. She was emotionally shattered, overwhelmed by sudden fame she never had the tools to process. The story disappeared almost as quickly as it surfaced. Media outlets stopped asking questions. Despite everything, Susan Boyle was sent straight back to work. Her debut album, I Dreamed a Dream, shattered records, becoming the fastest-selling debut album in UK history. Millions of copies sold worldwide. Tours were scheduled. Appearances multiplied. Behind the success was a woman barely holding herself together. She traveled constantly, navigating airports and foreign countries she never dreamed of visiting, all while struggling to understand what was happening to her own life. Around her at all times were handlers, people who controlled her schedule, filtered her interactions, and managed what she said and did. Decisions about money, contracts, and property were made without her full understanding. Despite earning millions, Susan Boyle continued living modestly. Rumors swirled about trust funds and financial arrangements she didn't comprehend. Family members found it difficult to reach her directly, and those who raised concerns were quietly pushed aside. In 2012, a long-hidden truth finally emerged. Susan Boyle was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism that affects communication and social interaction. The diagnosis explained so much: her confusion, her vulnerability, her inability to cope with chaos. Even more troubling was the revelation that she had suffered brain damage at birth due to oxygen deprivation, resulting in lifelong learning difficulties. Instead of slowing down to protect her, the industry continued to push her forward. Her condition was initially kept quiet out of fear it would affect her marketability. The question of consent became unavoidable. Did Susan Boyle truly understand the contracts she signed? Did she know she could say no? Or had a vulnerable woman been placed inside a system designed to profit from her obedience? As the years passed, Susan Boyle's public image became tightly controlled. Interviews were rehearsed. Answers were coached. Moments where the real Susan emerged were quickly corrected. Videos showing her struggling mysteriously disappeared. Articles were scrubbed. Lawyers were replaced. In 2017, a serious stroke scare landed her in the hospital, highlighting the physical toll of years of stress and pressure. Depression followed. Anxiety intensified. Medications increased. Later documentaries finally showed cracks in the narrative. Susan Boyle's own words contradicted the story the world had been told. Family members spoke openly about being shut out. Former team members broke silence, admitting guilt over what had happened. Financial investigations revealed troubling discrepancies. Management fees were excessive. Properties were purchased in her name without her understanding. Millions flowed everywhere except into her control. In a recent interview, Susan Boyle finally spoke her full truth. She admitted she had been manipulated, controlled, and isolated. She confessed that her diagnosis had been used to justify taking away her autonomy. She confirmed that her audition had been carefully orchestrated and that producers knew about her talent beforehand. Her voice was always real, she said, but her freedom was not. The story of Susan Boyle is not a fairy tale. It's a warning about fame without protection, talent without power, and an industry that values profit over people. She gave the world hope, but in return, her life was tightly controlled. Behind one of the most inspiring voices of our time is a truth that is painful and impossible to ignore.
If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe because stories like this deserve to be heard, not forgotten. Thanks for watching.